Hi, everybody. I'm Scott, and thanks for joining me again today for another episode of the companion podcast in support of the film Skin on Skin, The Rise and Fall of the World's Largest Furrier, Part 2. Get ready, friends, because today, oh my God, we're closing in on the end of the second season. This is our Something in the Teens episode. There's only a handful left. We'll have spent about 40 some odd hours together. And this may be amongst the most fun that we're going to have together of all of them. Don't be fooled by the setup here, because if you stick around, you are going to get some drama like we have not shared with you before. Drama that includes guns, drama that includes pimps, drama that includes prostitutes, drama that includes blood, drama that includes murder, drama that includes threats of murder. Stick around, you're going to love it. I'm going to give you a nice little setup, though, because what we're talking about today is customer service. And I don't just mean, the old kind of nice, oh, Evans is so nice, customer service. Although we're going to give you a lot of that. That's part of the setup. I'm talking about that latter part, the dealing with customers, with the situations, with things that you never thought could have happened that were happening right before your eyes. But before we get going, please join me in taking a minute to send condolences and remember Evans Fur's General Counsel and Secretary, Samuel B. Garber, who passed away this week at the age of 91. Mr. Garber worked for the Evans Fur Company for quite a few years, putting together and finalizing all the deals that David Meltzer was out there doing to expand the company. And he worked for Evans for quite a few years before going on to a teaching career in law at DePaul University in Chicago.
I would say, God, this coffee tastes different. And Peter would say it was cinnamon. It was some sort of drug.
It was a very short time he worked for them because they could never find him.
Le Grand Hotel, 45 La Croisette, Caen, France.
We're here to build a business with you and to make you money.
Today, friends, we're doing another one of our deeper dives.
My father was, he could be a total asshole to people.
Oh, we got to find this. You guys got to do it right now. I forgot about this. And he's running around like a chicken with his head cut off.
Go in for higher price lines. Attract new and better customers and be unafraid.
I spent 43 years in the industry because I made a lot of friends.
I didn't know that, right? 22, 23 years old. I'm like, no, I'm not taking it back.
These stories today certainly are influenced and totally affected by the Evans Fur Company.
I was after inventory, and there's like $250,000 worth of merchandise missing.
I'm actually weaving a tapestry, kind of like orchestrally, in with my guitars. They're all building and changing.
So he was an assistant, and he put the keys on the table, and he walked out and said, I'm out of here. I'm not coming back.
Skill set is really going down. Like let-out garments are almost impossible to make in Greece.
I was giving them an opportunity to buy from me.
Skin on Skin, The Rise and Fall of the World's Largest Furrier, Part 3.
Well, you know what? Right now to this day, I work for Crystal Furs, and I have customers that come in there in that store, and they say, I know you. And I would say, you do? Because everybody know me, but I don't know no damn body. I don't know faces. I've been in the business for 45 years, and I'll be looking at these people, and I was like, well, where do I really know these people from? And they have a coat that came from Evans. She said, you sold me my very first coat at Evans. And these people are still bringing in fur coats from Evans at Crystal Furs, and even at BC International, they still.
Evans not only trained the staff, they trained the customers too what to do.
Exactly. And you know what? They hate that Evans ever went out of business. They hate that.
As a matter of fact, tonight, I'm having dinner with my oldest customer. Well, not in age, but I started new business with her in 1984 at Old Orchard.
Wow.
And actually, I've sold her a coat every year since then. And we're having dinner tonight. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing that somebody like Diane Jones, who is still doing this 40-something years later, has customers coming in today who worked with her 40-something years ago, that people like Ken Levy are still dining and socializing with customers that they've been selling to for decades. I mean, it's remarkable that this is what old sales really was like, was that your best customers also became your friends, that you developed a relationship with them. And in this next group of stories, you have some more customer service stories, along with some stories about the longevity of the people working at the Evans Fur Company. And it's all capped off by this incredible retelling about the world's greatest fur salesman.
Stories. I mean, many stories. I can remember the first time I sold a Stone Martin coat. Mr. Geller was on the floor. And this thing, I think it was older than I am now. And I don't know what it was, but I had one coat. This lady, she wanted a sable, and I think, or she wanted to look at a sable, and we didn't really quite know if she was a sable customer. We showed her a couple. We didn't really have anything. She was not small, and we didn't really have anything to fit her. And so I said, listen, I think I have it's not a sable. I think it's just something that I just really want to show you. It's very special, et cetera, build this coat up. I bring it on. By then I knew, I thought it was going to fit her. And I brought it out, the Stone Martin coat. She put it on and she said, I'll take it. I mean, and I remember Teddy G, he gave me a $200 a PM on that sale because that coat was older than it was really old. So anyway.
Knits were a very big thing in those days. Knit outfits, whether they were pants or dresses. Pants were becoming then kind of more popular. It was a long time ago, so people weren't wearing that much pants, but they were starting to. And I remember when we would have those, we would open on a Sunday, and we had to be there at the crack of dawn, and we would start putting these knits out, and we would sell so many, Scott. Oh my God. We just kept taking them from the back and putting them in the front, taking them from the back and putting them in the front. And I mean, we would have the biggest days and I think they probably sold for, I might be lying about this, but I don't think that these things sold for more than, it was maybe about $70 for, a pant set. But they were lined up outside. They were lined up waiting to get in because, like you say, my neighbors would talk about this. Oh, Evans has such lovely clothes. And he has such, and it wasn't just the coats and the dresses and the sportswear. They were also coming for the furs. But at that point, what was important to me was the apparel.
Well, Evans was really, really high profile and well respected. There were a lot of employees, obviously, as you know, all over. But yeah, now Evans was a major force in the community. and very well respected.
It was all part of the how they trained us to make sure we had good customer service. Everything was customer service in the end once you bought a coat. And you knew when you bought something that you weren't going to have a problem. If you had a problem, you could come and they'd fix it or they'd give you a new one. That's all part of the customer service. You know, and I think that throughout the years that, you know, after his father passed away, I think David was not as tough as everybody else was. He was more, but he had good people like Sam Fields and Walter Warren. You know, those were the tough guys throughout the years. You know, and then as that went along, you know, Robert was a little more easier to get along with than his father was. You know, and I don't think they really wanted to be as tough as they used to be.
How we sold as a package, because we were having problems with people spending money for the service. We couldn't get them back in the, you know, and it's like, we just told them up front, here's the package, it's included, right? This is your price. We already included it. Now, if they don't show up, that's on them. But we made it very special, like they were part of the Lazarus fur family, you know.
That was brilliant.
Yeah, because we got the money up front, and we gained a client, right? Which was kind of cool. And it was good because we also got a lot of referrals from that people really respected how we did business. Like, we brought them into almost like a fur community. And at the time, retail was so different, as we know. Like, I couldn't even imagine a retail store doing this unless it's a very private boutique.
Car dealerships used to do it.
Yes.
Where they would throw in a service package.
That's right.
But you're paying for it.
That's
you know?
right. That's right. It was kind of, you know, that analogy is interesting because we were like a glamorous car dealer, because we weren't sleazy, like, let's go in the back and let's try. We were very upfront with the costs. We showed them what they were getting. We showed them the advantages. Again, it was all that knowledge. And the fact that they trusted us was why we did so well. You know, they weren't just coming in like going to a Best Buy and buying a TV. They were buying a specialized product that they wanted to know. When you spend thousands of dollars, tell me what's so good. You know, why can't I just buy a regular wool coat or a fake fur, you know, for a fraction?
I think that there was no question that Evans was a very recognized and respected brand in Chicago. And I think that one of the things that we did that wasn't so great was that we wanted to be a little bit higher end. And we had this incredibly loyal clientele at the more of the, you know, middle level. We did a huge layaway business, for instance. And I don't know why we weren't more comfortable with that and building on that. You know, some of the, you know, when we went on Michigan Avenue, I mean, I know from the perspective of the fur department, that was important because Blum's Vogue was, you know, on Michigan Avenue years before. But I did wonder why there wasn't more pride in being who we were in terms of versus who we wanted to be.
We used to go to Alaska and have trunk shows there. So we went to Anchorage and Fairbanks. That was actually the first sable coat that I sold.
Wow.
in Fairbanks. Yes.
Sitka, Ketchikan. I went to all those places when the Graf and David's airplane. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. I had to fly commercial. You know, so you know, if I ever got wealthy, that'd be the thing I would have, a plane. Not wealthy, rich. I would have a plane because I hate flying. It's the worst thing. And then in Tulsa.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You were in Tulsa. What was the store? Miss Jackson. So that was a higher end store. So what was selling there like? Because now you're getting some really serious wealth.
Actually, I sold more Black Diamond coats the first year I was there than anybody else did at a higher markup. Because we were in New York and Walter Warren was reading out, you know, the profit margin on Black Diamond, and I was store number 27 or 28, and I was number one with Black Diamonds. Yes.
Wow,
Yes.
that's
So then,
fascinating.
oh yes, and we sold a lot of Ralph Lauren there. Nutria lined plaid Ralph Lauren jackets. Nobody wanted me to buy it when we were at Tepper. And I said, I have to have it. It'll be the perfect thing there. And we sold them out to the piece. It was very nice down there. No, it was cash and carry, no charge cards. And 30 days they had to pay for it. And it was very elegant store, very nice. Yeah.
There were so many characters there too. For a lot of people. There was a salesman at the State Street store by the name of Sam Mellon, which was not, of course, his real name. I don't think I ever knew his real name, but they anglicized everybody's name in the 1950s, and he'd probably been there from the time he was 20 years old on. And you literally couldn't understand what the hell he was saying when he was talking to women, but women just loved him because he was suave and he was smooth and he was nice. It was one after another. I could name 20 characters out of that business.
He was great. He had a rapport with the customers. I don't know if they understood what he said or anything like that, but I asked the question, how could Sam Mellon never sit down? So I asked him, I said, Sam, let me ask you a question. How can you never sit down? He told me, because the other one got his pants wrinkle. I said, okay, this is his Mr. Gas. His Mr. Gas, he says, when I'm on the bus, I stand. I said, oh, okay, all right, that's what you want, but yeah, he looked like $1 million. He was a sharp dresser, and he did look like $1 million. And these women loved him. They fell in love with him. He was a great guy to them, but he had an unusual personality, and they all had different personalities on that floor.
Sam Mellon. Sam Mellon. I remember meeting Sam Mellon the first time, and he made a beeline to me, which took 20 minutes, but because he shuffled very slowly and he was very old at this point. He'd probably been there 30 or 40 years by then, by 1981 or so. And I don't know how he did so well selling.
Because nobody understood what he was saying.
Couldn't understand a fucking thing. He said, literally mumbled like,
well, he looked as if he should have been carrying like a little dummy, because it's like his lips never moved. And they were saying, oh, we're gonna look marvelous,
Right. But he looked like $1 million every day. He was a drama.
Can I tell you something? I think it was more than the look. He had warmth inside.
And he makes this 20-minute beeline shuffle over towards me because he knows I'm a member of the family, to tell me I'm a friend of your family and they get good to me and that whole thing. And it was, I'll just never forget.
Sam Mellon. Yeah.
Did it ever amaze you?
Amazing. I didn't know what he did. I accused him of everything. And I just did not know what he did. And the wife. Remember the wife? Who was like 30 years his junior and good looking. And it's like, wow, how did he land her? But then she was cheating on him anyway. So, yes.
I introduced him to my mother, and they dated. They dated for about maybe 6 months, but my mother was in Florida. He used to go down he had a place in West Palm Beach where he would go. I don't know if he owned it or like did a timeshare, but he would take, he was given 6 weeks vacation or whatever
after being there 40 years.
Yeah. And I set him up with my mother. And I will tell you something. My mother needed hearing aids at the time, so it wasn't the mumbling. She said he was one of the nicest, just really most genuine men. And she said, my mother always said, after my parents divorced, she says, how could I ever meet a man that, is going to be like your dad? Because my father was a good looking guy. My father was, he was very charming, my father.
Yes,
He did have that ability. And she did tell me that Sam Mellon, although she did understand when my father spoke, Sam Mellon was one of the kindest, nicest, and genuine people she's ever met in her whole life.
Final episode of the Skin on Skin companion podcast series.
I'm sure it's not necessary for me to tell you that going public imposes a new obligation on all of us, and especially on you as a lease department manager.
We're not really in the used coat business 10 years ago or 15 years ago, but today it's predominant that we have a lot of used coats.
In Cleveland, I used to say, this stuff smells. Why does it smell so bad?
You explained your dream, and then it was the salesman's job to go and find it in that vault.
And even the very first time I stepped on the floor as a trainee in Chicago, you knew more than the customer 99% of the time.
In New York, the manufacturing level of talent was amazing, of guys running great businesses.
I was 19 years old, and I think I was more responsible, toward the Evans Fur Company. I had more consideration than he did.
Well, because your reputation's on the line every time you do something.
Paul Becker was in the audience, and before you know, my father and Paul were having a good conversation. Got pretty loud back and forth.
I cut it up into choir, and you put it in Melodyne and made the different harmonies and stuff. I did that.
So what new restaurant was in town? And as long as they were there, well, look at this. I have something to show you.
I'm sitting on the toilet and it's 7:30 and he's calling me going, where are you? Why are you not here?
Huge things and changes are afoot, as we shall tell you. But you know what?
Working with the people on the third floor where I had gotten pre-approval from Freddie, kind of. And, it was a major sale day, so everybody was pitching in. We were all taking customers, and I got this customer. She was 4'0", and she just came in. It was a windy Chicago day. Her hair, she looked like she just got blown in from a hurricane. She was muddy. She was wet. So I ended up, and I had to take her back into Freddie's office because it was the only room that was open, back in that room. So I'm talking to her, and she said, well, I think I might want a mink jacket in there. And so we're talking. I found something for her. And as I'm looking, she's got more jewelry on than Mr. T did. So I'm going, she's got a little money. So I brought her a black diamond jacket. And she goes, I really like the quality of this. I'm like, well, if you want something a little different. So do you remember the old sable coat we had, Larry? We had it on the third floor forever.
Well, I said a group of those.
Yeah,
there was a group that went around the country too. So long before we were buyers, all purchased before.
everybody, because after I had her and I'm carrying, it slowed down and I'm carrying the sable coat across the floor, and the looks and the stares I'm getting from Jan Shireen, Miss Florence, Sam. I mean, they were like daggers. And then they were all laughing because, he's never going to sell this thing.
Right? The woman was homeless.
Right. Right. Well, she said, well, I can write a check or I can put it on credit card. And I'm like, credit card today. And she's like, okay. And I said, but I tell you what, maybe you need a hat to go with that. So Pat Murphy bailed me out, and she happened to have a sable hat. And she said, yeah, just give it to her. Because it was as old as the coat. Well, what happened after that was how, I won't say I became endeared, but I was taken somewhat seriously. After that, when I went to put the sale in and I put it down, my name didn't go in under the sale. It was Sam Mellon. What?
And?
What? Now that pissed everybody off, except for Sam, of course.
Of course.
But even Dwayne Walker, he was the one who really said it. He goes, guys, he just gave us a sale. So, because I checked with Freddie first, and I'm like, I'm not taking commission from these people. So, next time we had a sale, my next customer, I had a black diamond coat, and I gave it to Jan, I think, because she was kind of in the area and helped me with one or two. And after that, they realized I wasn't their competition. I was there to help them. And once we had that understanding, I was gold. I mean, Jan used to bring me lunch.
First of all, it took my dad probably an hour to get home from each way in Chicago because we lived in the suburbs. By the time he got home, it would be 7 o'clock at night. He would usually come in. I mean, we had dinner as a family every night. He would lay on the couch and watch TV, and then he'd go to bed. And the next day he'd get up and go and do it again. And he used to tell me my life is back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Because that's what it was. Every day he'd get on the train, go down to the store, so. He insisted every year we went on vacation. We had a family vacation every year, no matter what. He didn't necessarily detach because he called every day, but we did get away. And he typically, the store was closed when he got home. So there was nothing, no reason for him to call. And he worked on Saturdays. So, he typically worked 6 days a week.
6 and 7 in season when we would have, it was sale weekend because even those guys who were doing the buying and whatnot had to, recharge everything for us constantly. So that November to February period was brutal in those days, man. Yep. Wow.
Yep. So, so that's pretty much how life was. And, any kind of activities that we had, he didn't get to go to many of them. I mean, he was busy, but I never felt, it never really bothered me. I always knew that it must have been an innate thing because I was a kid. I always knew, I never felt neglected or that he was picking Evans over me. I never felt that way. And I don't know if it's just because I could see, even as a kid, how important it was to him. And it also set an example for me. I mean, I'm different. I'm more involved in my grandchildren's life and my kids' life than he was, but I'm also a woman, for starters, and it's a different age. But I never was upset by it. I don't remember ever thinking, oh, he's missing all my stuff because he works so much. That never occurred to me.
But there was a company called Madison, which was a small regional department store in the Midwest based in Columbus. And they had a fur salon. And I can't remember the guy's name, but I know that he knew a lot of people. He was one of these sales guys that had been around. He knew everybody. Cleveland had a little bit bigger market for furs, so he was connected to those folks. And he represented himself as he was the expert. Why would you go to a big giant department store like Lazarus? Come to us. We're in a small, in the village of Kingsdale, it was called. And come into our salon, they would treat them, great, coffee, tea, food all the time. It was a very different type of atmosphere than what Lazarus was at that time. And we had to figure out, okay, how are we going to compete against this? Because we felt like we were the experts. And really what it came down to is the Lazarus name was super strong. And the fact that a lot of the Lazarus family at the time still worked in that department store, nobody could beat that. Okay. So while they had a great little salon, which by the way, the guy that, if I can remember his name, wound up working for us after we, and I hate to say it, but we kind of put him out of business because they would go in the salon at Madison's and there'd be maybe 20 coats. Okay. They'd come into Lazarus in our store downtown and we had like 100 coats and we had rounders and racks. I mean, it was like and at that time, the superstores were becoming, people were building these big box stores, and to come in and see all these fur coats, nobody was used to that. Even the old Lazarus salon, they didn't have anything like that. That inventory we took over was nothing. It was all like old little like Blue Fox jackets and a couple of mink coats. We had the whole place packed to the gills with merchandise. So we knew that we weren't going to be the highest end, but we knew that the way that we dealt with the customer and the selection that we gave them, there was nobody in the city. You want to travel somewhere to go do it, find it, that's great, but we have it right here for you, right in your backyard.
Having had some experience in Chicago with the operations of the Drake event that we did, where we did, $1 million in one day, I felt confident, especially in the Beverly Hills scenario. We had some of the finest customers and wealthiest customers, and it was something that had never been done before. It was actually a 2-day event, and we did about $1.5 million in 2 days. And I remember the most expensive coat that we sold, I ended up selling a Royal Crown sable coat for $80,000. And I remember getting the signature from the customer, and actually my hand was shaking because I had never made a sale that big. And he was a surgeon, and he invited me to deliver the coat to his house. And it was just a very exciting, I had never ever seen a home like that. And he became a repeat customer. He had a wife and 2 daughters that loved furs. And that was usually the case, that you were working with generations of customers.
Okay, my friends, here comes what I've promised you all along. The guns, the threats of guns, the blood, the murder, the prostitutes, the pimp, and somehow it all involves the Evans Fur Company. These are the customer service challenges, shall we say, that took place over the years at Evans.
I had a personal trade. I usually had this one lady come with her husband, and they bought, I don't know how many furs from me, and they used to own a rag company, and they didn't trust the banks or anything. They didn't trust the rings. So she used to walk with all her money in a shopping bag to go across the street to deposit the money from the company. I used to say to her, "What are you doing? I mean, this is ridiculous." Then she said to me, she said, "Don't how would I say this?" He said she went in a Cadillac dealer and she looked like she was homeless. Her husband. They bought 4 Cadillacs. They bought 2 for themselves and 2 for their kids. So you can't judge a cover. Both by cover, that's what I was saying. These people were loaded with money. They were great people. They were nice. I had a great rapport with them. They must bought 781st to me.
I have some interesting situations that happened. We had at one time, we were, believe it or not, carrying some men's jackets, leather jackets with with mink inside. And we didn't sell many of them, but one person wanted to buy it for himself and a few of his friends. And he came in and he bought it with cash. In the back, he took me with $5 bills, counting it out on a desk in the back. And it was like $3,000 or something like that. Like, this is crazy. And I was noticing his nickname was Kane. They kept calling him Kane. All right. Well, I know what you do, Kane. That's why you have $5 bills, right?
Right. I hope you licked those bills before you deposited.
I tell you, I don't know how far I should tell you this, but I'm going to tell you because it's happened so long ago. So he's counting out these bills and just, we're going up to whatever it was, $3,000. I gave him the deal for, with tax and everything. And at the time, I was the assistant GM, and the GM wasn't there, and he was coming back from wherever his break was. It was Jim McDonald I told you about. So make the sale, all the cash, we put it in the system, whatever. We write it up. He leaves. Jim McDonald comes back. Oh, good, you made that sale. And he goes back. We shared an office. Our desks were like together. And I did not know this, but on my desk, one of the drawers is open a little bit, and McDonald opens the drawer, and there's like hundreds of dollars of fives in there that the guy left as a tip, which I told him I couldn't take. He did tell me, I want to tip you. I'm like, I can't take tips. No. So Jim McDonald, he comes in, he says, did you take any money? I said, no, I didn't take any money. He goes, well, in your drawer in that office, we found whatever it was, $200 or $300 cash. I'm like, oh, good. That was nice, because I told him I couldn't take it. He goes, well, here's what we're going to do, because I trust that what you're telling me is the truth. We're going to take that money and we're going to give it to charity. I was like, that's fine. I don't care. I mean, I didn't expect anything and whatever, but these are the kinds of, that's a story that again, sticks with me. I'm like, I'm sitting in the back with a drug dealer selling him a leather reversible mink jacket, right? And he's paying in fives, and he's paying me in a drawer that I didn't even know. And I could have lost my job over that. And that was like my first or second year I was there. That would have been bad. Right.
That's like a Flukey story.
Yeah. Well, I completely honest on that. I mean, I would have told him, I said, yeah, the guy gave me a tip. I didn't know I couldn't take it, but I told him I couldn't take it, which was interesting. So there are stories like that.
Now, wait a second. This girl Charity that he gave it to, was she custom?
No, this was for him. This was for Kane.
But it's amazing the cross-section of people, shall we say, that this industry of ours drew back then.
So all I'm going to say is, all right, so all of the guys are standing around, as you can very well imagine. And who is this girl? I was no longer working for Evans. I was working somewhere else. I'm helping out Brian. And this woman and her husband walk in, and I thought, geez, this looks pretty good here, but you never know. And so I started talking to them. She said, listen, I want a chinchilla coat. And she asked for a chinchilla. We had one. And this woman was tiny. She was small. We had one coat. And so I think I had Brian take it back or something like in the back. I said, oh, we have one very special coat. I said, we have this in a separate spot for you. I said, we wouldn't just have this out on the rack. And I said, if you'll just give me a moment. And I put her over in an area where there weren't a lot of people. And then we had a mirror there. And I bring this coat out like I'm selling on, in a salon, which we weren't. And I put this coat on her, and she fell in love. And I want to say this coat was like $55,000, right? And she fell head over heels in love. So we started talking, and she's, and I'm looking at her husband. I'm thinking, I hope these people have the money. Dear God, I hope these people have the money. So, we started talking. I ended up selling them like $125,000 worth of merchandise. They bought a jacket for their daughter. They bought other minks. They bought, whatever. Okay. So now I'm like, okay. So I spent maybe an hour and a half with them by this time. Right. And he said, well, and I, closing the sale up. So I called Brian over, and I didn't tell him we weren't married at the time. I didn't tell him. I said, this is my manager. There you go, Brian. This is my manager. And, so Brian helped me close up the sale and handle the credit, because I didn't even know how to do the damn paperwork. I needed him to do the paperwork. So anyway, and I think that then they were going to come back and do the fittings, or they were going to pick them up. Brian did the fittings on the floor there. And then but I think she took that coat, the chinchilla, with her.
She was chinchilla with her.
Yeah, she wouldn't take it off. So, okay, so now I'm dying. The guy's credit went through in 1 minute. It was on a Robinson's charge. It was $125,000, and it went through in 1 minute. She walked out with that chinchilla, and I think we kept the rest for monogramming or whatever. And yes. And so we remained friends. Ed and Kay Brooks, I can still remember them. And they were a beautiful couple. I think he's deceased now. I kept in contact with him. Anyway, that's a story. And that night, I think we let all up. Brian and I were then invited to go to dinner with all the big shots, and we went back to a place we never would have looked forward to eat in Beverly Hills.
Customer service challenges. Well, there was nothing like learning in Nordstrom in the 1980s. It was a time when they were growing and they were expanding, and their biggest challenge was to take their largest asset, which was their customer service ethos, and expand it as they started growing. I mean, in the 2.5 years I was in the San Francisco Bay Area for Nordstrom, I opened both the Stonestown store and the San Francisco Center store. And so, those are mass undertakings that take years before that happens. And so like I said, so their biggest challenge is they grew throughout the West Coast and then back east and then eventually throughout the whole country, was to take this thing that made them special, which wasn't that just they were originally a shoe company and wasn't just that they did a great job of buying and had a great presentation and great selection, but it was this customer service thing, that their customer service was bigger, badder, and better than anybody else's. And they would go to the ends of the earth to keep these customers happy. And I just sit here and scratch my head thinking at some of the times we had to give in, because we're talking about a fur coat here that could be anywhere from hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands of dollars at retail price. And so, it was a very sensitive and delicate situation when people wanted to bring these things back. And like I said, at Nordstrom, it was no questions asked. They didn't care about the abuse that the customer was giving us in the fur department. They didn't care about the abuse that the customer gave the product. All they cared about was that person was happy and that they would go about their business talking and regaling Nordstrom for how great their service is. So there was this guy, Ray Johnson, who was the vice president and ran the San Francisco Bay Area. And he and I did not click from the start. First of all, he loved Jody Hofberg Olin, who preceded me. He liked her a lot. I think she was the perfect blend of give and take for him. And I was a young piss and vinegar whippersnapper at the time. And first of all, I'd come from Robinson's, where the return policies were not as liberal, and you could put up a wall and get backing from store management and from corporate management if there was a good, legitimate reason. Like the coat came back looking like, it had been through the front lines of a battle, you would get some support, but not at Nordstrom. And this guy, Ray Johnson, who ran the San Francisco Bay Area, and I, as I said, did not see eye to eye. And I had one particularly difficult customer in Palo Alto. I remember this vividly. She bought a black diamond coat that was somewhere in the neighborhood of $12,000 to $15,000. And she took it and had it out for pretty much the entire season, almost 6 months, and wanted to return it. And when it came back, the lining was destroyed and had to be replaced because it had a tear, like a hosiery tear running all the way through it. And the coat had some damage to it. And so I said no. And she got in my face and she said, "This is Nordstrom. You take it back." Oh my God, I cringe thinking about it now. And I put up a fight and I said no, and I supported my salesperson who had also said no when she brought it back into the back to me and said, "Here, look at this thing she's trying to return, this $15,000 sale." And we'd worked a long time on that sale, as I recall. Well, lo and behold, as always happens, they go upstairs to store management, and the store manager comes down, and to the store manager, I'm also saying, look, I can't. Normally, I do anything I can to be a part of the team here and whatnot, but this time I can't. And one of the things that they did not like was that they didn't control us the way they controlled all their people and all their stores. We were this leased department. We were this guest in their home, who didn't make our bed exactly the same way that they made it every morning. So the store manager goes to Ray Johnson. And again, Ray Johnson, he was a big, tall guy with a big head and big hair with a big part. And I mean, the total Nordstrom way. He looked it, he acted it. He never liked me because I used to wear Hugo Boss suits, which they didn't sell. And they wanted you at the time in their own Nordstrom private label suits that you bought in their menswear department. And he said something to me at the beginning. So we kind of just did not hit it off right from the beginning. And so the store manager calls him. And then I get the call from him. And I never forget this. He goes, "Scott?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "Ray Johnson here." And I said, "Hi, Ray. How are you? What can I do for you? Let me guess why you're calling." And he said, "I'm authorizing them over here to take this credit." And I said, "Well, I can't do that, sir. I went through the whole story, this and that." And he said, "Look, that's not how we do things here. So I need you to take care of this." And I said, "Mr. Johnson, respectfully, I'm not going to do it. This is an abuse of both the Nordstrom system and of this piece of merchandise." And I didn't say it as calmly as I said now. And there was this pause on the phone and this silence. And I could hear him, the breath, and him leaning into the phone. And he goes, "You take that credit and you knock that chip off your shoulder, or I will come down there and knock it off for you." And I was frozen in my place. And 5 minutes later, I took the credit and with my tail between my legs, and "Here you go, Mrs. So-and-so, and have a nice day." Oh my God, it was so tough in those days there.
I had another situation where that relationship helped me build it. It was a bad thing in a way, but a customer came and abused the coat that they bought, had it out for 6 or 7 months, and came back and tried to return it. Well, we're not Nordstrom's, right? But we want to take care of the customer. Obviously, we want to help you understand why you're returning it after 7 months of the season end. Right. And it was several $1,000s. Right. And I'm like, no, I turned them away. They went right up to the GM. The GM returned the money, asked me to come up to the office to pick up the coat, and said, "Jeff, the reason we did that is sometimes we give away thousands of dollars to make millions." And it made me think, you're right.
Yeah,
that was right. But I was mad because it was I took it personally. This is my business and you're giving me a used coat that's dirty. And you want me to give you back 100% of your money? No, and I pushed back.
And they're also looking at the cocktail story thing too. That was the Nordstrom thing. So what if somebody returns a tire and we don't sell tires? They're gonna be happy, and B, they're gonna tell everybody, "I returned a tire to Nordstrom."
Right, but that wasn't really what was happening. Right. I mean, this is a clear case for me. I didn't know that. Right. 22, 23 years old. I'm like, no, I'm not taking it back. Absolutely not.
Well, plus that's what we were trained from Chicago too, right? Those guys, you try and bring something back in Evans and Chicago.
I mean, if it's a couple of weeks, that's a different story. But come on, a whole season, you're going to come back in 7 months and tell me you want a full refund?
Well, it kept her warm all winter, so.
That's like returning half a steak.
Right.
Right. How was it? Hope it was good.
Well, we were doing it wasn't a hotel sale. It was a empty store sale at River Oaks. Whatever we called those, I can't remember. And George was there and Victor was there, and we were working it. And he gets this one customer, and she's trying to get this coat on and that, and George sees her struggling. He goes, "Here, can I help you?" And she turns around, she pulls out her gun and hands it to him, barrel side first, of course, and hands it to him. She says, "Here, can you hold this for me? It just can't fit with my coat on." And George is 2 fingers going, "What do I do with this?" Hold it.
Well, I had a lady. Well, let me tell you about a customer that came in one time, And a young girl came in with a blue box. Remember the blue box blank coat with the zipper bottom that the zips off? Okay. And she says to me, my sister had a little accident with it. Can you clean this? And I opened the lining. The whole thing was full of blood. He said, what happened? She said, well, she got murdered. And I liked her coat, so I'm taking it. Really? I said, when did this happen? She said, about 2 weeks ago. I said, holy smoke. I said, no, we can't clean this. You have to put a new lining in. So this is how things work. I said, oh my God, but I like your coat. So that's why I'm keeping it. She got murdered. Yeah, it was a lot of hours, the whole lining full of blood.
That shipping all these coats out, then the people came in to get the coats, and then we had to replace a lot of them. And I was running the going out of business and store closing at downtown and at River Oaks, where Shelley Cullis was running the River Oaks one. And, I had customers come in crying, telling me I had one woman, she sat there. She said, I'm coming in here and I'm going to blow your fucking brains out. This old lady, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to kill you and all your people with a gun. I'm going to blow your fucking brains out. And I said, holy shit.
Army petite. She was dressed from the Army petite, and she wasn't no young woman. She was an older lady. She walked in the door and she said, I want to see whoever's in charge here. Maury Rosen, to be honest with you, he was in charge, but he ran. So Jimmy came out. So the lady was sitting in the room and she told Jimmy, I want my fur coat. And Jimmy said, well, we're going to try to find your fur coat. So she told Jimmy, if you don't find my fur coat, I'm going to F you up. And Jimmy looked at her like, and I was saying to myself, I hope this damn woman ain't got no gun on her, because then he's really going to be messed up. Michael be in there, oh, we don't know where your coat's at, and we're going to try to find your coat. And we thought they were going to kill Michael Lee. So they sent him away. They put him in they told him, you going back to River Oaks.
It's because we couldn't find your coat. You had people like Tony Greikus. I'd call Tony and say, you have this coat? Let me look in the computer. I says, don't you look in the computer. You go in the goddamn vault, and I want to know if you have it in your hands, but don't tell me you have it and you go in the vault and you don't. And then I got a customer to come back here and tell them that we lost their coat. I want to know that you have it in the vault in your hand, that you're going to send it to me tomorrow.
You know what? I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe what had happened, because I couldn't believe they went in there in the middle of the night and took all of those customers' coats and brought them to State Street and didn't tell anybody. Because let me tell you something. The people that was on that phone, you had pimps that they wanted their coats. They was drug dealers and they wanted their coats. You had people calling. The customers was watching them take their coats off the back door. They saw them. Took them all to State Street and they piled them up in the back. They took the records out of all the stores. They put them in a box, all the customers' records, and they put them in a box. And they brought everything to State Street, but with no notification. They told, and the only person who was on that floor that day was me and Jerry.
Oh yeah. Well, I get a phone call Saturday morning from Sam Mellon. At that time, I was a regional. And he said to me, I want you to go to North Riverside and close that store up. I said, what do you mean? He said, it's right before Thanksgiving. I said, well, you want me to close? He said, send everyone home, make sure they put the money away, put the furs in the vault, and lock the door. We're not opening that store no more. I said, really? I said, so I went over there. I made an announcement that we're closing the store, and then everyone could go home. They'll get in touch with you. I said, let's put the furs in the vault. All of a sudden, the gates were down, people were pounding on the gates. I want my fur. I want my fur. And must be calling people up. Next thing I know, there's a crowd in front of the store banging on the gates. They wanted to get their furs out. Then the North Riverside police came. He said, I said we're closing the store. I can't give you the furs. I can't give the furs out. I says, I was told just to close the store. So they said, you have a crowd of people out here that want their furs. I says, I know, I can't do anything about it. So he says, let's close the store up now, and I will escort you guys out the back door. What happened? It's out the back door. It was a terrible. It was horrible. The coats, I put them. I don't know where the coats went. We left it there. I guess they came in a later date. They took everything out. I know, but I just put the furs in the vault. I let the store manager go at the time. I said, you have to leave too. He said, what do you mean? And, that's how it was. It was very sad. It was a bad day. It was a real bad day.
About William Morris Flukey Stokes and his son who died, Willie the Wimp Stokes. So let's hear what you know about this whole thing.
So unbelievable. And I remember I don't remember the guy named Flukey. Flukey used to come. Flukey was a little guy, a little black guy. He was a pimp, and he would come with every other Monday at like 6:45.
Well, all I know is that we had this customer, Flukey is what he went by. And he was probably, when I met him, probably in his 40s. And he was a true pimp. I mean, that man came in dressed in velvet with a top hat, and he had a walking stick, and he was probably only about 5.5 feet tall, no bigger, but he had a really big personality.
He would call and say, I'm on my way. He put on 2 batty bars, and he doesn't know how to read or anything like that, but he knew how to count money. And in his briefcase, he had all this money. He used to buy furs for his girls.
And it was at a time when men's furs was like a big thing, or starting to be a big thing. Wasn't quite as big as it did, as it got with the hip hop era, but because we're talking about, this is like the early 80s. And anyway, Flukey would come in on a pretty regular basis. He would buy something, nothing truly expensive, extravagant, but not expensive. And we never saw him for cleaning, I'll tell you that.
All this stuff. But to count money, he knew how to count the money. He didn't know how to read. He said, I said, you need a receipt or insurance? He said, what do I need insurance for? I got these 2 bodyguards.
There was never any service on those cars. Okay, so anyway, it wasn't unusual to see him in the store every couple of months. There's this one, on the 3rd floor, if you were out on the selling floor, you could actually hear the elevator stop. You'd hear the ding, and it looked like a clown car. Out walks Flukey, and then there was a parade of probably 10 to 15 prostitutes, like just walking behind him, and he's got that walking stick and that swagger. And they immediately brought him into the back room by Sam Field's.
The French room, yeah.
The French room. Anyway, he brought them all in, I guess, it was their Christmas bonus or whatever. And he bought each and every one of those prostitutes, who were probably between the ages of, say, 18 and 22. Every one of them got like a rabbit coat or like one of the, the white. Again, he was extravagant, but he was not loose with his money. I swear to God, he would come in with a bag of money. And this will tell you the caliber of his girls. It was like 10s and 20s.
Well, it so happened one of the bodyguards killed him. He got buried in a Cadillac with $100 bills in his fingers. How you like that? Yeah.
He would sit there, and I thought it was pretty disgusting because he would lick his fingers and then count it. And I'm like, oh God, you know where that money has been? And I'm sure
he should have had his own label, because in a way, Flukey is kind of the fur designer to the street.
Flukey Stokes was it then? Oh, that was Stokes. Yeah, I can't remember all this stuff, but there was great times there. I mean, there was unusual. I mean, great times. We had great times there. I mean, it was wonderful.
Okay, so anyway, we must have spent 3 hours in the showroom with them. And like I say, there were like 4 people in there writing up, the sales form. And I think after it was all done, the whole sale was like maybe $4,000.
Okay, but I think the important thing here is that we have plenty of goods that are, what's the right word, shall I say, that are prostitute appropriate.
Well, we had everything from soup to nuts.
Mark says to him, he never bought the insurance, and he would say to Flukey, what about the insurance? And Flukey would point to the bodyguards that always came in with him and the girls, and he goes, I got them. What do I need insurance for? So what ended up happening? One of the bodyguards killed him.
Yeah, probably took the coat off first. Although it wouldn't have fit the bodyguard. I'll tell you one thing, though. See, Evans had us all sort of mesmerized to make extra money, because if you sold that worldwide insurance, you got another 50 cents. You know what I mean? And in the 70s and 80s, those 50 cents added up.
We did a lot of stuff that when you would sell something, you would sell them, and then you would, if you had to take another coat or have somebody make it, you were able to do that. I remember once I was working at BC, and I went to one of the stores to pick something up, and a customer was in there, and the coat didn't fit. The sleeves didn't fit. So I said, oh, okay. I looked at it. I measured it. I says, oh, we can fix this. So instead of sending it to factory in Hillside, I sent it to the manufacturer, the guy who made it, and said, you got to make the armholes deeper and make them wider. So we sent it back to him. He re-nailed it, bigger size, gave it to the customer, and the customer was real happy. Because they went to Milwaukee and Milwaukee couldn't do anything. Then they came to Oakbrook. I just happened to be there when the customer was there, and I just took it back and we fixed it. And we saved a $6,000 mink coat sale.
That's the way you finesse
some of those things you can do that maybe the salespeople don't know you can do.
Whoa, look how far we have come.
I had been in Woodfield as a vault boy.
My father never told me. He just told me I was always stupid.
I originally started in LA.
So it was 10 years that I spent there.
The thing is, this is not super complex.
You guys got to stop advertising 40 to 90% off. I have to tell you, you got to create allies. And I think we never figured out how to create allies in our industry.
Memorandum, January 30, 1970. The body is an old 1902 model. Sometimes the motor sputters with pain.
Being a leader, being the CEO, it's not an easy lifestyle. The grunt work, guys, is the final mile, though.
I worked with Denny Lane, worked with Paul McCartney in Wings, very popular band.
I could tell you my interrogation with Frank Ricky.
Has been detrimental to the fashion industry, not just the fur business, but the fashion industry as a whole.
When you're doing a hotel sale, you got to take a lot of goods to fill up the room.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the difference between buying and merchandising. And so I guess after all of that, what else can I say except hold my gun? I'm Scott. This is the companion podcast in support of the film Skin on Skin, The Rise and Fall of the World's Largest Furrier Part 2. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you had as much fun as I had and that you agreed with me when I said this was going to be quite the setup, dropping you down at the very end. Until next time, have a great day. We'll see you soon.
On the next episode of the Companion Podcast, in support of the film Skin on Skin, The Rise and Fall of the World's Largest Furrier, Part 2.
We spent a certain amount of time in each area, which, again, educated us to be able, and so many of us, not only grew within the company, but use that experience outside the company to start our own businesses. Again, you talk about the cards, like the 3x5 index cards. We had cards that told us how to sell fur storage and cleaning and the soft dough pelt preservation process, which that was the hardest part of the 3x5 card, when you had to write down that it was getting the soft dough pelt preservation process. I could now make 240 a week, not 120. And I worked like a dog to do it. Oh, and by the way, you just have to know that what the training program did for me, because I was in there, there were people that were hired for that position, but he let everybody know that I sold it.
And that's what they didn't like.
They didn't like the fact that it's like they questioned, why is this guy in a suit? He's the vault boy, But again, after a while, they grew to love me because not that I was on the floor on a regular basis there. I really did return to being the vault boy. But whenever there was a need, I was out there.
Like in the 70s and 80s, the fashion aspect of the whole thing was really big before the crash. And I don't know if you heard it or not yet, but in my interview with Barry Novick, he was funny. He talked about how, if you think about it, some of the people that were making decisions about what quote unquote fashion would be in the world were like some of the biggest schleppers that there were on the planet.
On the next episode of the Companion Podcast, in support of the film Skin on Skin, The Rise and Fall of the World's Largest Furrier, Part 2.